I think that a good agent is going to do their research ahead of time. We're going to ask the right questions. How old is the roof, the HVAC? We're going to look in the crawl space at a showing. We're going to be, when the client is walking through the house, thinking, oh, my furniture would look great in this living room and my kids would be perfect for this bedroom and my office can go here. And they're looking at those things. It's our job as professionals to be looking at the things that could be a potential problem.
Hey, welcome to the episode 4 of the Unbiased Truth Podcast. This week we are sponsored by 360 Home Inspections. And today's guest for everybody joining us and listening is going to be Kristin Murphy of Mission Realty. Hey.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. So the first question I have, I'm moving already. Courtney's going to yell at me. And the first question I have is, why are realtors always late?
Well, Sidney, that's a very good question. I like to think it's just because we are very busy and we have a lot of clients that we jump from one thing to another, but usually we're in the drive-through somewhere, in between showings, grabbing some food.
Yeah. And, staffing shortages these days.
Of course.
Yeah, slows everybody down.
Yes, it's not our fault. It's always someone else's fault.
I didn't know if that was like one of those test questions when you're getting realtor's license, like when are you supposed to be there? Like 5 minutes late is the correct answer.
Yes,
okay.
Absolutely. Okay. What's the bonus question?
That's right. So for those that don't know, we've been doing this song and dance for home inspections and you selling houses. I looked it up the other day. Yesterday, almost 50 inspections we've done together.
Yes.
Yeah. And I've done probably, like 48 of them, the exception of one or two that Gordon's done, because I was, busy or whatnot. So, we've been doing this for a little bit now.
That is, I know it's been a while.
Yeah.
I'm surprised that it's been that many.
Yeah. So that's why I wanted to bring you on. Obviously, our audience, our core audience is real estate related, right? When we do this, not always, but that's the goal. And just to get, because how long you been doing this?
So November was 2.5 years.
Yeah. So for 2.5 years, and we didn't link up right away. But for us to do 50 inspections, even over a 2.5 year period, that's just on the buy side. That's not including all the listings that you've had. So that's a lot of moving in just a very short amount of time. So not everybody is obviously successful in that way in real estate. There's a high attrition rate from what I'm told. I don't really know, but I think there's like a lot of fall off.
It's hard to get started. Yeah. And then once you get started, you have to continue to put the work in, which, sometimes people aren't really necessarily willing to do that long term. It doesn't always come easy.
I think because we're getting a flood of home inspectors, just like there's a flood of realtors, because when the market is good, everybody looks at it and says, well, because go on so many home inspections and the client's like, you must be killing it, right? And then, And then, all of a sudden we have 150 home inspectors in the area, right? I don't know how many there is, but, they just start, every day or once a week, it seems like we're getting a phone call for shadowing, getting people on a shadow to get their license and whatnot. And then they get in, it's like realtors do, and they realize it's not just checking doors and outlets and it's a little bit more to it than that. And then the whole business side of it, because it is a business, even though you're an independent contractor, right?
Yes.
1099, self-employed, however you want to look at it, it's a business, right? You got to approach it. I think a lot of people fail to approach it with the business mindset.
Absolutely.
And they kind of fall off, right? So, but with that being said, what were you doing before real estate?
So ironically, I did a complete 180.
Yeah.
I was in the medical field for 10 years post-college. I went to school for nursing and worked in doctor's offices for 9 years. So this was quite the change for me.
What made you change?
A lot of life circumstances. So I first moved to Virginia. I went through a divorce and had a toddler and a baby and started all over in a new state. And I could work part-time because daycare is really expensive around here. So I worked part-time and that just wasn't enough to feed the family.
Right.
And so it kind of happened organically. I joined a mom's group and I met my sponsor who was a real estate agent in the Winchester area, relocated here, and I started doing her social media, which was very easy for some extra side money. Yeah. And it turned out that I actually kind of fell in love with it. And so I did the complete switch to real estate, thinking it was going to be a lot easier.
That's right.
And I would have more control over my schedule than working at a doctor's office or a hospital.
That's right.
So in some ways it is, but
yeah, that's one of the dirty little secrets of being self-employed, right? Everybody's like, oh, you get to make your own schedule.
Yes.
Sure do. From the time I get up, time I go to bed, that's my schedule. Made it all by myself.
Not realizing there's a lot of other people we have to work around.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I would imagine being divorced with two small ones, nursing, unless you're like in a family practice or something, just isn't conducive, right?
It's not
because,
really.
Like hospitals and everything, it's typically 12-hour shifts and whatnot.
Right.
And,
right.
Nights, weekends, holidays. So I can see why, circumstances. And it's funny, and this is a whole nother podcast just talking about the value of college, not saying it's not valuable, because I have those pieces of paper, but we've talked about before, not on here, but just the fact of how many people are doing what their college degree says they were supposed to do, and I think Courtney and I talked about how a lot of times I think that college is really, I think you benefit more from college after you figure out what you want to do.
Oh, absolutely.
So it kind of shores up what you're doing, that foundation and whatnot. But like I said, my take on college and how all that's a whole nother podcast. So you got started, and did you start off with Mission, or you were somebody else?
I did not. So actually when I started, I decided I was going to be an independent agent because for me, that's where I thought the extra money would be, where I wasn't giving away some of my commissions, as well as that flexible schedule. My husband works nights, and I have 3 little boys. So we wanted to be able to really free up the hours and be able to have our family time, and both of us still work and be productive and make money. So I started out on my own, and I also wanted to kind of dabble in not having anyone to really have their input in how I run my business. I thought if I'm going to do it, I would like to do it my way.
Right.
Well, so that was November, and you take the test, and they do not actually prepare you for the real world of real estate. And I found that out very quickly. And I'm the type of person that I want to handle my clients and treat my clients and be able to just really support them in the best way possible. And I didn't feel like I had the proper training to do that. So I kind of floundered for a few months and almost quit. And that was a big moment for me. Yeah. I was ready to throw in the towel. And I actually reached out to my parents' real estate agent, who is very successful in the Colonial Heights area and has a team when they moved to Virginia. So I sat down with her and just said, hey, let's have some coffee. I'd like to pick your brain. Not sure this is for me. Not successful yet. And so over that coffee break that we had, it was essentially like, if you want to be successful, A, you have to get the proper training and be surrounded by the people that are going to build you up. And they're successful, which in turn is going to motivate you, hold you accountable, all of those things. So she said, call my buddy Clayton Getz, and I think you should join the team. Even if you don't stick it out, stay for a year, get your proper training, your feet on the ground, and then you can go out on your own. But that was 2 years ago, and I've never looked back. Joining the team was one of the best decisions that I ever made. So if I had quit that day, I would not be where I am today. And last year I was top producer on our team, which, there's a few agents that have been there a lot longer than me. So that was a really big stepping stone. And I see the values of being on a team as well as being solo. Right. But for me, I just fit better in a team environment.
Yeah. And being top producer on Mission, because Mission's it's not a 6-person team. They got 40 agents, 50 agents?
Yes. So last year we were on average 30
30.
So we're a little bit bigger this year.
Yeah. So that's a pretty big accomplishment in your second year. But yeah, I think a lot of people, they do that. They get in, because we see it all the time. Well, I see it all the time on these inspector groups and whatnot. Like, hey, I've been a home inspector for 4 months and I've done 3 inspections, and what do I do? I'm thinking about quitting. And it's a marathon, not a sprint. And a lot of times you just don't surround yourself with the right people because you don't know,
Right.
And that's where I think the value of the teams comes in. But I read a quote the other day, and it basically said, $20,000 a month seems hard and impossible until you surround yourself with people who make $20,000 a day.
Exactly.
Because it's the mindset, right? And just what you get off of them, just by listening to the conversations, and be able to help. And yeah, I know there's a lot of discussions, everybody, like you said, everybody's, team's not for everybody,
right.
But I think, and then there's a lot to that, because you got your team splits, you got, the team rules, each team's different, and all that comes with that. But at the end of the day, if you're coming out the gate as a solo agent, unless you have a huge spear to begin with, which some people do, and that's great, but a lot of people don't, especially if you're like an introvert or something like that, and you don't have those connections.
Right. Or younger, sometimes if you don't have a lot of life experiences.
Right.
That kind of limits how you can do business.
Yeah. And not to say that you don't go to a brokerage, whether it's, a brick and mortar brokerage, and there's people that I can't help you, because there is, obviously EXP is a different model, than a cloud-based. So you don't, I think it's probably outside looking in, probably a little bit harder for a single person to really be overly successful quickly in EXP. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, right? Because it all depends on your mindset, your spear, your attitude, all that stuff. But yeah, if you're younger or starting brand new, a team is very beneficial. So with that being said, what really took off for you once you got on the team?
So for me, it was the support that we had. So we run a very, very structured team, but it's all about, we have core values and a mission statement, and we run it on that mission statement and core values first and real estate second, which is the type of person I am. That's how I run my personal life.
Right.
So our mission statement is to improve lives, families, and communities. And our core values: do right, do well, do good, and have fun. And so the environment alone, it helps you with that mindset, because positivity is one of those breakdowns of those core values. And we offer wow +1 service, integrity, honesty, those types of things. So when you are surrounded by that environment, it's very easy to remain positive.
Right.
And then we have little mini squads amongst our team where it's very easy to check in on a daily basis and hold each other accountable. We celebrate our wins and our losses together. So it's not just about the money or the splits. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes that I feel like is more important. So for me, I thrive in that type of environment.
Yeah.
And that's where I became successful. I could breathe into my sphere of influence, which is the most of my business, the majority of that, as well as, dip into internet leads, that sort of thing as a side hustle that is provided by the team, but still be who I am without conforming in a different way.
Yeah, and I think the money part is a hesitation for a lot of people when you're on a team, because you see your splits go from, you split with your broker until you cap or whatever that looks like, depending on where you're at. And then you split again with your team, and then you get your check. And then you start thinking about, like, well, what would this look like if I was on my own? How much more money would I get and whatnot? And, I've had conversations before where it just depends on what that team provides you.
Absolutely.
If you're on a team and the team's you just feel like that the team's just taking money out of your check, then yeah, if they're not providing tools and resources and ideas to help you grow as an individual, whether that is cultivating your ability to generate your own leads or feeding you leads, or giving, like I said, the tools and things like that, then it's easy to see, well, why am I spending this money? I can do this on my own, versus a team that has a real culture to it. It has those systems in place
Right.
that you're benefiting that you just can't get on your own, you know, so that because the theory would be to do more business, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's what the admin structure comes into play. We always say on leadership that it's designed to take out the distractions so that you can lead generate and create those relationships to form that relationship type of business instead of it just being transactional. And we just had this conversation with a couple of agents the beginning of the week where we discussed the splits, but the individual has to decide what's more important to them.
Yeah.
Could you make more money on your own? Maybe. However, when you're on a team, at least how our team is structured, they pay for our marketing. We have a listing manager who is doing all of the paperwork behind the scenes to get a listing up and running, where I can be out with the client, which is what I enjoy doing. Right. I don't want to spend, 8 hours a day doing admin work.
Yeah.
So that to me is a benefit. And then we have a transaction coordinator. I'm convinced I couldn't have done the amount of business I've done in the last 2 years had it not been for her help and monitoring those deadlines and emails and things like that so that I can be out in the field.
Yeah.
So for me, it's the benefit outweighs it. And if I had been on my own, my commission check may be larger.
Right.
But if you count out all of the hours that I would have been spending driving to put a sign in the yard or meet the photographer, put a lockbox out, all the marketing dollars, all of those things are done for me.
Yeah.
I don't stick a sign in the yard. I don't deliver flyers for an open house. So I think for most agents, it is a mindset piece that if they just sit back and really focus on what they would be spending, yes, you may get it up front in a commission check.
Yeah.
But you're spending a lot more on the back end, and you have to determine what's most important to you.
Yeah, you're almost to the point where you're going to start sending somebody in your place for these home inspections.
I might.
Yeah. And then there won't be no more cinnamon rolls.
I know. Well, let's not get carried away.
That's right.
You can go ahead and bring those cinnamon rolls.
All those are great points because when you're like we talked about, being self-employed, there's a misconception. Or running your business, however you want to look at it. There's a misconception about, you make your own schedule.
Right.
And if you do all that stuff on your own, as busy as you are, that work-life balance is just gone, right? It's just work. And get into these groups, and I know you've seen it with agents that wear it as a badge of honor, 24/7, 365, sending you texts at 9:00 at night, and whatnot. And I'm over here like, man, I got 3 inspections tomorrow. I don't want to do that, because I'm missing whatever,
Right.
Whether it's kids' games or just self-improvement on your own. So so there's a lot of, the mental health side of that really plays into being able to balance that and having a transaction coordinator and people to do that for you to be able to, because you're burning it on both ends at that point.
Absolutely.
You don't have all that stuff. And if you're busy,
and it's hard enough now with the back end help to set those boundaries and realize that it's okay to turn your phone off at 8 p.m. and not accept a phone call.
Right.
I cannot imagine doing the amount of business that I do now without that extra help.
Yeah.
So kudos to the agents who do it.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot of work. But I do believe that that's where the agent burnout comes into play, especially in this type of market.
Yeah.
So I would encourage people to set healthy boundaries.
That's right.
And hire some help if you can.
Yeah. Because we label it as grinding and hustling and all that other things, and that stuff's great. There is part of that, but a lot of it isn't that. It's just you're doing it and you're breaking down, and you just don't realize it. So you really got to be able to manage that. Because I was going to ask you, how do you manage that work-life balance with so many clients, right?
Yes.
But obviously some of that is with the support of the team,
Right. And it's a work in progress.
Yeah.
We preach this all the time on the team that you imitate before you innovate.
Right.
And so I was spinning my heels trying to do what everyone else was doing, because I'm surrounded by these very successful people. And they say, sit down to coffee with those find out what they're doing. Something they're doing is right.
Right.
Get those pieces and then do what works for you.
Yeah.
So I was spinning my heels trying to do all the things because that's what you feel like you have to when you start a business.
Right.
You know, you want to be successful. So my first year, it was very much organized chaos. Yeah. And my kids came to me one day, and I believe I said earlier, my husband works nights. So they come home from school and one parent is gone because we work opposite shifts to keep the kids. And so one day my kid sat down and said, "You're leaving again? We never see you anymore." And that was kind of a wake-up call.
Yeah.
What I was doing was not working. And if I wanted to continue to have healthy personal work balance, that I had to change some things. So I actually made that one of my goals last year. Had 3 business and 3 personal goals, and made conscious effort to work on the personal side and the business side and give them each a better balance. So it definitely is a work in progress. And what I do is not going to necessarily work for someone else, and vice versa, because my life is very chaotic with parents who work separate schedules and small kids at home. Yep. So I think that people just need to do the best for them. And I'm slowly learning what that is for me.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's a process, you know, every day's a process. I think my wife said the same thing yesterday, that my kids, today's always working. But you know, that's just the phase that I'm in right now, you know, trying to grow a business. And then, you know, obviously we merged with MPI back in November. And when I had that moment when like say, when you didn't have those processes in place, you know, and then when Ricky, who did our marketing before Courtney, turned in his 2 weeks, you know, it was like I didn't sleep for like 3 days, you know, because
it's stressful.
It is, because it's all of a sudden, you know, how am I going to balance all of this?
Right.
You know, because, you know, we're still transitioning, and I'm still trying to grow. And there was a lot of irons in the fire at that time on what we wanted to do, such as a podcast and whatnot. So, you know, and that was just going to totally ruin, because like right now, like I don't do hardly any Sundays. You know, I don't do hardly any evenings. I'll do the occasional Saturday, but like right now it's spring sports seasons, you know, for the kids. So trying not to do as many, because the kids only have, you know, so many softball games, so many soccer games, and then they're done, they're gone, you know, and not just for this year, it might be the last year. You just don't know. And I didn't have that when I was growing up. You know, I always had to find a ride to practice and whatnot, and never had that support from my family. So I want to try to be there for my kids, and sometimes it's hard. You know, you don't always make it, but it's when the kids are the gut punch sometimes to reel you back in and realize you got to change something. You know, so with that, you know, obviously when you're doing all of this, one of the biggest things I want to, before I forget, one of the biggest things that you do is network, right? I think we have the same philosophies in building relationships with people, you know, versus just looking at people as money, right? As transactional, you know, relationship versus transactional. So part of that is networking, right? Because a lot of times, like I don't do this on my own, right? You know, we go to, 2 days ago, I was in Newport News and saw something I've never seen before. And I told the clients, like, I've never seen this before. This is bizarre. And of course it was foundational stuff, right? So, you know, big ticket stuff. So, you know, so I'm sending, you know, messages and phone calls to other people that I've networked with and I've built relationships with to figure out, you know, what part of this is okay, what part of this is not okay, to get them the right information. But there's a lot of people that don't do that in both of our industries. They just, you know, fake it till you make it.
Right.
And
it's not the right way to do things.
And I've seen, you know, inspectors post something like, you know, this is wrong and blah, blah, blah. Like, and you look at like, no, like that's 100% right. Like,
or those that do ask Facebook because they don't have valued professionals.
There's so it's funny that you say that, because if you go join an inspector group on Facebook, somebody will post like, hey, what is this? And is this okay? And then you'll get 30 responses and they're all different. So like, good luck. Who you going to pick? Like who's right and who's wrong?
Because none of them are trusted sources.
No. So, and I just like, I just don't understand, like I said, network, join a group, meet people. And that way, when you have questions or you need help, just shoot them text messages, make a phone call, whatnot. So what's some of the things that you're doing to be able to, I moved, she's going to yell at me.
How dare you?
But yeah, networking.
Yeah. So I think, you and I have talked about this a good bit over the past couple of years working together. You and I met very organically. Mm-hmm. We bonded not over real estate and inspections.
Right.
We both lost a sibling. And so we started an organic conversation and relationship. And then look where we're at today. Mm-hmm. And we're a trusted source. And I do think that we run our businesses very similar, that we do care about other people. We want the best for people. Yeah. We're not okay. We can't sleep at night if we're just faking it till we make it.
Right.
So one thing that I love is partnering with people who have that same mindset. Yeah. So as soon as I learned how to network properly, because, I used to be very shy and an introvert. Yeah. You're the same way. Yeah. You're an introvert.
And I don't like people.
You don't like people. That's right. And then we make you like us. And so you have to step out of your comfort zone to realize that there's value there. Yeah. And change can't happen if you're comfortable.
Right.
So one thing that I do is I network with everyone possible. And you're not going to jive well with every single person. But once you find your people, and I've done a really good job of at least one person, if not multiple, in each industry. So not only is that a value to me, because I have trusted sources like you mentioned to ask questions to, so that, I'm not just guessing or asking Google and finding out the wrong answer, because that doesn't help me. It doesn't help my clients. But also we support each other's businesses. So you become preferred partners, preferred vendors. I am going to refer you to everyone and vice versa. So we're a benefit to each other. And then the clients value from that, because we can say without a doubt, if I send a person to you, I've either used them personally or I've seen how they run their business model. Right. I do think that networking is a big piece of having a successful business. Mm-hmm. And it's just talking to every single person you meet.
Yeah. Speaking of Google, industry secret is when the home inspector is spending too much time in the crawl space, it's probably because we're Googling stuff, trying to figure out what it is we're looking at. So that's a perfect place for us to do some research.
Don't you know that's why I follow you in every crawl space?
Yes.
I have to make sure.
Yes. I always have a standing offer for every realtor to join me. Mm-hmm. They never do. So
well, you and I have a habit of finding snakes in crawl spaces.
I know. That's terrible.
I'll leave that to you.
Yeah. You just take pictures of them. Just let them go back in.
Yes, I do.
Yeah. So when you're doing this process and right now with the inventory shortage, there's a lot more buyers, right? And it's easy all of a sudden when you're successful, you start backing up or stacking buyers, right? Mm-hmm. So all of a sudden you got 2, 3, 4, 5 buyers that you got to attend to, and there's no houses. You can go see the houses, but we know how that goes. But then you still have, you get them under contract, whether it's 1, whether it's 2, whether it's 3 at a time. And then there's a whole process to that, because it's just nothing but deadlines and inspections and appraisals and termite inspections and well and septic, depending on where you are and all that stuff. So what's your process for managing that stuff? Because it's very easy. This is a very pressure industry.
It is.
It's a very emotional industry, and that's all you're dealing with is emotions. Mm-hmm. And for getting, as a realtor, a deadline, all of a sudden has great effects on the client.
Very detrimental.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or if you're not paying attention when you're doing a listing and you say brand new water heater, and then I show up and say, nope, water heater from 1992.
Yes.
That's an issue, right? Mm-hmm. Because the clients are under contract based on the information you provided.
Correct.
And there's got to be some remedy to that.
Mm-hmm.
So how do you manage this process when there's so much going on and details matter, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, details always matter, but at this point, timelines and details really matter.
Absolutely, because most of the time, this is going to be the biggest investment that someone makes, home ownership. And it's a great way to build wealth. So I don't ever want to be the reason that someone gets into a bad situation, or, we miss a deadline and we lose a house, or, there's a lot of different things that can go wrong, and you can get into a lot of legal trouble.
Right.
So for me, that's a loaded question.
Yeah.
There's a lot that goes into that process, and it's been perfected over time.
Yeah.
So I do have a lot of back end help, which we talked about. So what I like and is important to me, because my strength is the people relationship.
Yep.
My weakness, which I can admit, is the transaction side of it, the admin work. So even though I am very detail oriented, I like that someone's coming behind me and checking. If I do make a mistake, I can count on my transaction coordinator to catch that for me. And we've fixed a problem before it actually happened. We always say we should be problem solvers before the clients realize there is a problem.
Right.
That's part of what makes a good agent.
Yep.
And she really helps me facilitate that. So my process is just to really deep dive. I keep a client, if I have someone under contract, we put deadlines in our calendar with reminders. I put it on a whiteboard. I keep track of those transactions. I have it in my calendar. So repetition and just staying on top of it and taking intentional time to sit down and think about, okay, where is this client at in the process? Whether it's pipeline and I'm just nurturing them, there's work that goes into that. Okay, I'm going to call them once a month, or I'm going to call them once a quarter.
Yeah.
And
some of these relationships are like 2 years long, 3 years long, 4 years long before they actually get ready to buy. So you got to constantly stay in, because if you don't, somebody else will.
Right.
So,
And we call that tomorrow's business.
That's right.
So if everyone says, well, I don't want that buyer because they're not going to be ready for 2 years, and you only want the right now business, well, when the right now business stops, you have nothing else. Yeah. And then you're left spinning your heels again. So there's different steps to the process for me. And a lot of that is just, again, being very intentional and breaking down my days. Okay, this is what I'm going to tackle this day. My people that are under contract. This day is going to be for those clients that I have to nurture. Yeah. This day is for my past clients, and utilize the processes that help facilitate a smooth transaction all the way through.
Yeah. And the funny thing about that is when you have those clients that are, like you said, some people don't want them because they're there for tomorrow, but I don't know how many times you get a client that refers you and they've not done a transition with you yet, just because you stay in contact with them, right?
Yes.
So just because they're not ready for 2 years doesn't mean they're not going to produce business for you in the next 2 years, because they, if you develop that relationship, they're going to refer you to the people who are ready now.
And I have had that experience. And one of my biggest referrals came from a lead that I've been speaking to for probably since I started with the team 2.5 years ago. And she's probably a 10-year buyer. But because I still keep in contact with her, she called me up last year and said, hey, the neighbor down the street mentioned that she wants to sell the family home. And that was a big transaction for me. Right. So if I had given up on that, which we tell our new agents especially, but anyone who kind of gets caught up in the process, those nurtures are important, and relationships are important. Because just because they may not ever buy or sell, it doesn't mean that they're not going to still trust you enough to refer you out to those other people. Yeah.
So moving into my favorite part, the home inspection side of things.
Yes. Never a dull moment.
There is not. So from a realtor side, and we get this a lot, right? I tell people all the time, we're not the favorite part of the process. It's always stressful, right? Because this is why most of the time, like appraisals, they can get rolled into the loan, or closing costs, I should say. But home inspections typically don't. I'm not saying we can or we don't, but most of the time we get paid up front. And the reason being, most of the time, if the deal is going to fall apart, it's going to be after the home inspection, right? Especially right now where you got, people seeing houses for 15 minutes at a time, making all kinds of crazy offers in a very rushed situation. And then all of a sudden they start having that buyer's remorse or buyer's regret when they get to the home inspection. Sometimes not even us. It's just them taking time to actually see the house and realizing they don't want it. we get blamed for it.
Right. Because they get to spend 3 hours in the house
Right.
during the home inspection.
Exactly. So how do you manage the inspections? Because there's a lot of, like, nobody knows what we do. A lot of realtors don't know what we do. A lot of home inspectors don't know what we do. So, yeah. So when you're talking to clients, managing that process and their expectations, and because we always find stuff, and especially in this market where sellers just aren't really, a lot of them don't really take the time to properly prepare the homes for inspection. So we're finding a lot more than what we did 3 years ago, because the houses just aren't being as maintained, because they like, hey, we're going to sell next year. I ain't worried about it. And then we come along, we find all this stuff. And most of the time, 80 to 90% of the stuff we find is just deferred maintenance, small stuff, things like that, easy fixes. But it can be overwhelming when you open up the report and you see 40, 50, 60 things wrong with the house, say that loosely. All of a sudden they start panicking. So how do you manage that to get them over that? Because at the end of the day, it's a solid house most of the time. But we also know what the market's like. So if they back out, you got to go through this process all over again. Right. And if it's not for them, it's not for them. But, I've had several conversations with clients like, hey, I'd hate for you to walk away. Like, I don't care if you could close or not, but I'd hate for you to walk away because of some issues that you're not comfortable with, because all you're going to do is change these issues for another set of issues. And it's a process right now. Right.
And that's a great question. I think it is important. I was listening to one of your past podcasts with the lender, and he had a great statement where he said it truly has to be a partnership. Yeah. The real estate agent, the inspector, the lender, we do need to be a team. So you and I, we know how we work together because we've done it so many times. But the biggest thing is just education. I think that a good agent is going to do their research ahead of time. We're going to ask the right questions. How old is the roof? The HVAC. We're going to look in the crawl space at a showing. We're going to be, when the client is walking through the house thinking, oh, my furniture would look great in this living room, and my kids would be perfect for this bedroom, and my office can go here. And they're looking at those things. It's our job as professionals to be looking at the things that could be a potential problem. So that was a big education piece that a lot of agents don't necessarily get. They don't teach that in real estate school. And if you're not on a team, it takes you a long time to learn those things. So if you can educate your clients prior to, so when we go to submit an offer, I'm saying, hey guys, I noticed that these were old wooden windows. Yeah. These could be an issue. If they're not now, they could be an issue. You're probably going to need to replace them. You have to worry, the type of siding, there's wood rot, the crawl space had standing water in it. So I'm looking at all the things that the clients aren't looking at or aren't educated enough to look at. And I don't claim to be a professional. Right. I'm going to leave that to you. But that helps in the offer process. So some of those items that are visual aren't a shock when you come into play. And I think that you are one of the best professionals that you take the time to explain things. And one of your opening lines is, we don't ever have a clean home inspection, not even on a new build. There is always something. Right. Houses are not perfect. They're just like people. We get older, we get wrinkles, our bones deteriorate. Right. Houses are the same way. So houses are going to have problems. We just have to determine what's fixable, and everything's fixable, but what are you personally willing to take on? And I think that the real estate agent has to be knowledgeable enough to have those conversations and be the calm in the storm for those clients when they see 60 pages. But you also do a really good job on the inspection side of it, as delivering bad news can kill a deal, but you will answer those questions for them and be that guidance and education piece as well. So I think it's a good partnership to have a good agent and inspector to handle that, so not every deal falls apart. Yeah, it's funny because when you do things a certain way for so long, you forget that other people do it differently. Right. So we'll get a first time realtor to us or whatnot, and
we'll start explaining things, and they're like, we've never had a home inspector explain stuff for us.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do you mean? Mm-hmm. Like, why doesn't everybody do this?
Right.
And so it's easy to forget that's not the norm,
Mm-hmm.
But again, you go back to the original quote of surround yourself with certain people, right?
Yes.
And the people that I follow, or the people I surround myself with, are home inspectors that operate in similar fashions.
Mm-hmm.
So I just, to me, that's normal until you step out of that bubble and you realize that nope, the bar's pretty low, right?
Professionals are not created equal.
That's right. So, but yeah, we talked about that yesterday in the CE class we hosted. Because that was the purpose of that class, was
Mm-hmm.
to give knowledge and information to realtors that you're not just going into the home showing that, hey, periwinkle blue is going to look great in this room, right?
Yes.
That you're actually looking beyond all that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
where the couch is going to look good at, or, yes, you could open up this room, all that stuff's fine, client engagement, but to be the professional and show value,
Exactly.
you need to be able to get out of your lane a little bit, but it's such a mentality of, well, that's not my lane. I'm going to stay in my lane.
Right.
Well, I'm not telling you to take over the whole lane, but it's important to at least know a little bit about what's going on.
And have a good partnership.
Yeah.
So the home inspection is not my lane. However, we can work together.
Yeah.
That's in the client's best interest.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's just, I think that's especially in a time where you see a lot of people complaining / concerned about these discount brokerages, where they're offering a lot low, 1% commission, or their agents are getting paid, hourly or whatever they do it. Like, I don't know a whole lot about it other than their discount brokerages. Well, so that way when the client calls you up and says, hey, well, this agent's offering 1% because they're with this discount brokerages, can you do that? Well, no. Because this is what I provided, they don't.
Right.
And that,
This is my value.
Exactly. So you got to show value, show why you're worth, right? So yeah, that's all good stuff. Yeah. You got anything else you want to talk about?
I don't think so.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you done doodling over there?
You want to know something that I noticed halfway through the recording?
Not really.
You're
mess
wearing a green sweater with a green screen behind you.
Oh, am I blending in? Am I floating? Am I floating head?
You might be.
That's what I call a Courtney problem.
Great.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's his fault. He didn't tell me not to wear green.
Yeah. Well, I don't think about things like that. So.
Well, I didn't think about it until like halfway through it. I'm sitting here and I'm like, that's going to be great for me.
Oh.
Good times. Good times. Well, I want to be respectful of your time. I appreciate you coming out. I think there was a lot of good information you provided.
Yes, sir.
I didn't want to dive too much into your secrets because I don't want you to spill all your secrets.
I have to keep that business for myself.
That's right. But no, it's exciting working together. It's exciting to see. And like I said, I mean, we've done almost 50 deals together, and it hasn't been 2.5 years that you've been in here. So that's just the buy side. Do you know how many you've done total, buy and sell? Do you track that?
So I did 41 deals last year and 18 the year before. And I believe I have 10 on the books for 2022.
So you're pushing about 70.
So not quite 100.
Yeah.
But I'll be there quick enough.
I mean, considering that the average realtor, depends on what numbers you look at. I think the common one is 12 a year.
Yeah, 6 to 12.
6 to 12, yeah. And of course that's, averages, right? So,
right.
But still, to do, climbing up there 41 in a year when the average is 6 to 12, it's pretty impressive at 2 years in.
Yeah, I've been very blessed. Have some great clients and great referral partners that
Yeah,
help
right.
as well.
That's right. For anybody wondering, I pay a lot of money for people to say that about us. Well, if anybody wants to find you, they want to network with you, or they want to buy a house with you, how do they find you?
So anyone can look up my website or give me a call, email. I'm very flexible. So my phone number is area code 540. I do not live in Fredericksburg. So 540-850-5302. And email is Kristin, Kristin, at Mission Realty.
Awesome. I appreciate you coming in.
Thank you for having
And
me.
for everybody else, thanks for listening. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, and we'll see you in the next one.